Now, the closure of the stations has raised questions about the state's electricity supply. One leading energy market expert has warned it could lead to higher electricity prices. Simon Royal has this report.
Tom Playford's vision was for South Australia to be a manufacturing powerhouse. Electricity generated in Port Augusta using cheap, low-grade coal from nearby Lee Creek was a cornerstone. Now the vision's dimming.
Well, the Playfordian model's unravelling, and it's unravelling in manufacturing. And of course in the energy sector, he revolutionised our South Australian energy sector.
Energy market economist Danny Price followed SA's electricity privatisation push in the mid-1990s. He says since 2009, demand's fallen 10% across eastern Australia as households embrace solar and industry embraces offshore. But he says there's a direct link between Alinta's ills and governments, including Mike Rann's, drive for wind.
There's no doubt at all that subsidised wind generation in particular has had a very significant effect on Alinta's decision.
I don't think the company would suggest that the idea of us having a lower carbon emissions future is anything other than inevitable.
Danny Price says Port Augusta accounts for about 16% of the state's capacity. Closing it does two things. Prices go up, supply security goes down.
I don't think the sky's going to fall, unless, of course, you don't like high electricity prices. And South Australians have probably suffered more than most in that regard.
He argues the cheapest solution is to enlarge the interconnector to New South Wales and Victoria. There's excess supply because, like SA, demand's fallen. Port Augusta's larger-than-life Lord Mayor, the late Joy Baluch, campaigned for a solar thermal plant to replace the old coal burners.
Solar thermal is a great technology with great manufacturing and job opportunities. It can also store and dispatch baseload renewable electricity.
Others argue solar thermal doesn't avoid the pitfalls of renewables, better than wind, but still too variable to be considered base load. They favour nuclear.
Ideally, I think we need a replacement that secures jobs and employment in the long run and secures electricity supply in the long run. And I think the best option to deliver that would be a nuclear option.
Port Augusta's had economic near-death experiences before. In the early 90s, Australian National Railways was privatised. Well over 1,000 jobs went, then the power station shed another 500. 20% of the city's jobs vanished, virtually in an instant.
Well, this is of similar magnitude in lots of ways, and it comes at a time when mining employment is very slow, with commodity prices not driving mining. There's a real problem in the north of South Australia.
Nuclear versus solar isn't so much the question, he says, as a big investment in something. Simon Royal, ABC News, Adelaide.
Now, joining me now and giving up his time to stand in the cold is the Mayor of Port Augusta, Sam Johnson. Sam, how did you find out about one of your city's biggest employers closing down?
Unfortunately, Nicola, I had to find out the early hours this morning by the media, which was a little bit disappointing, but I can get over that fact. The thing I found incredibly disappointing was the people directly affected, being the employees and the families, also found out the same way in which I found out, which is probably not the nicest way you want to wake up on a cold Thursday morning.
Now, more than 100 jobs will be lost in Port Augusta at these stations, but what do you believe the flow-on effects will be to other businesses in the community?
Yeah, look, the flow-on effects are going to be huge to Port Augusta and the region itself, and also the state of South Australia. And these are people that are on reasonable wages, and they're spending money in the community. They're buying cars, they're buying boats, they're shopping in the supermarket, they're supporting our local businesses, they're participating in sport, buying sports gear, all of those things that we take for granted. But for people in small business, that's their livelihood.
Do you believe some other businesses could close as a direct result?
Look, absolutely. I'm aware of one business already who has a significant supply to Alinta in what they do, and they've indicated already this morning that they will close their doors, unfortunately.
What do you believe the best option is going forward in terms of creating jobs in the city?
Look, one thing that I've been saying for quite a period of time, and the people of Port Augusta have been very strong about, is that we believe that Port Augusta will be the renewable capital of Australia. We do have the people willing to do it. We have the international companies that are willing to make that investment, but what we need is the state, the federal and the local government all to come together and actually devise a cohesive plan to actually make this happen. It can happen and it should happen.
Thank you so much for your time, Sam Johnson.